A 72-hour truce has been called in Sudan as EU nation-states begin evacuating its citizens.
US President Joe Biden is expected to formally confirm he will run for re-election in 2024, a potential rematch against old rival Donald Trump. Donald Trump's civil rape lawsuit begins in New York, a case brought against him by a journalist for allegedly sexually assaulting her in a department store in the 90s.
Kosovar Albanians will govern the majority Serb regions in the north of the country after ethnic Serbs boycotted elections on Sunday, a move endorsed by Belgrade. The first group of Italian citizens to be withdrawn from Sudan has arrived in Rome at a time when a 72-hour truce has been confirmed by the two parties to the conflict. Fighting between the regular army and a paramilitary group called the Rapid Support Forces has left at least 420 dead and around 3,700 wounded. Early Tuesday morning, both parties confirmed via social media that a 72-hour truce that had been proposed by the United States had come into effect. Several countries around the world, including those of the European Union, are now withdrawing citizens who remain in the country. According to the head of European diplomacy, Josep Borrell, EU member states have already managed to withdraw 2/3 of their nationals present in Sudan. That's around 1,000 of the 1,500 who were in the northeastern African nation when the conflict broke out. France is also carrying out a delicate evacuation operation and is setting up a base in Djibouti to receive all displaced persons. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also promised that the United Nations will not abandon Sudan.
Four more years. Speculation is intensifying that Joe Biden will today announce his bid to retain the US presidency. The 82-year-old has dropped several hints in recent weeks that he's poised to confirm his candidacy for the 2024 election. So far, no significant Democratic rival has emerged to challenge him for the nomination.
He's going to have to run on things about how he can steward us through these difficult times. The economy is better. We're out of COVID, not completely, but we're in a much better place. Inflation rates are dropping. We're respected around the world in ways that we weren't before. These kinds of messages I expect to hear from a Biden candidacy, and I think he can readily run on those.
An announcement would set the stage for an explosive rematch with Donald Trump, who is the front runner to become the Republican nominee. But it appears that's not what American voters want. Polls consistently show people would prefer neither man to stand again.
Great again.
Donald Trump is back under the legal spotlight as a civil lawsuit in which he's accused of rape begins in New York. The proceedings will start with jury selection at the court in Manhattan. The case has been brought by US journalist E. Jean Carroll, who claims the former president raped her in a department store changing room in the city in the 1990s. Trump denies the charges, but his lawyers have indicated he will not appear in person in court to defend himself. As it's a civil case, Trump won't go to jail if found guilty. But it could be politically damaging, as testimony is likely to include a litany of allegations from Carroll's legal team.
For the first time since the post-war era of 1999, the four northern municipalities of Kosovo, inhabited by a majority of Serbs, will be led by leaders of the Albanian community, who are in a minority in these areas. On Sunday, Serbian parties and citizens boycotted elections there, a move officially encouraged by Belgrade.
Ovo je pokazalo ogromno jedinstvo srpskog naroda, disciplinu I odgovornost Srba kakva nije viđena u savremenoj istoriji našeg naroda. Srbi su se ponašali ne samo nacionalno svesno, savesno I odgovorno, već se ponašali kao veoma snažan narod.
According to journalist Jamai Reja, the election proved very little and there were no winners.
This is not good for Kosovo, as it would turn the attention towards crisis in the ground and not the bigger picture, which is implementing the Brussels and then Ohrid agreements, which in a way implies that Serbia will recognize Kosovo's right to exist.
However, Kosovo's Prime Minister Albin Kurti does not share this perspective and has asked them to work in the interests of all citizens, even the ethnic Serbs in the majority who boycotted the election.
$200 light tanks. That's the number of refurbished combat vehicles the Netherlands is sending to Ukraine. While Europe is second to the US in providing support packages to Kyiv, the EU's foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell says military aid isn't getting to Ukraine fast enough.
More than 1,000 missiles has been provided to Ukraine, and a number of ammunition which is still growing, but it has to grow quicker in the next days. The second track, another $1 billion, is being finalized by member states. There has been some disagreement, but the work continues. We are not waiting for the legal document to be finished to start working.
This same message was given by the Prime Minister of Estonia, Kaja Kallas, on her visit to Ukraine. She says she supports Kyiv's NATO application.
So for peace in Europe, we need Ukraine in European Union, we need Ukraine in NATO. This is also the message in this joint declaration we have just signed. This is also the reason why I suggested to the European Union to jointly procure 1 million artillery shells for Ukraine and send them directly to Ukraine.
In addition to munitions, EU member states and NGOs continue to send humanitarian aid, such as this charity in Riga, which was visited by the Estonian and Latvian First Ladies. It's here where aid packages are prepared for both Ukraine's defenders and civilians.
Outlining the current Russian order of battle in Ukraine, the Institute for the Study of War says Russian forces are operating in decentralized and largely degraded formations throughout the theater. And the current pattern of deployment suggests that most available units are already online and engaged in either offensive or defensive operations. The current Russian pattern of commitment around Bakhmut suggests that the Russian military leadership is increasingly prioritizing the completion of the capture of the city before the start of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, if possible. The Wagner Group continues to take heavy losses. It may well be able to complete seizure of the city at some point. Sustaining Wagner's advance beyond its culmination required the Russian Ministry of Defense to commit airborne forces formations on the northern and southwestern flanks to allow Wagner to concentrate almost entirely on the urban fight. In a rather stark contrast, the Russian grouping in Kherson region is likely the most disorganized and undermanned in the entire theater. Russian elements there have been reconstituted and redeployed after the Russian withdrawal from the west bank of Kherson region in November. The Institute for the Study of War says it is highly likely that the remaining grouping on the east bank is mainly comprised of badly under-strength remnants of mainly mobilized units. Over the weekend, the think tank said Russian mill bloggers have provided enough geolocated footage and textual reports to confirm that Ukrainian forces have established positions in east bank of Kherson region, though it's unclear at what scale or with what intentions. Ukraine Southern Command spokesperson Natalia Humenyuk said she could not confirm or reject the report since, quote, the conditions of a military operation require silence until it is safe enough for Ukrainian military.
Uproar in European capitals after comments by China's ambassador to France caused outrage when EU foreign ministers met in Luxembourg on Monday. In a TV interview last Friday, Beijing's envoy appeared to question the sovereignty of Ukraine and other ex-Soviet states, which ruffled some feathers, especially in the Baltic countries.
This is clear that the Baltic states and Estonia, we are an independent sovereign country, we're a member of the European Union, NATO, but I hope that there will be explanation.
We're not post-Soviet countries, we're the countries that were illegally occupied by the Soviet Union.
China later walked back its envoy's remarks, but this diplomatic controversy comes at a very delicate moment in EU-China relations, given that Brussels is unhappy about Beijing's refusal to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. China is promoting its own peace in the war, which is seen as biased and selective by Europe.
Recently, some ideas regarding peace were floated by China and also by Brazil. Now, for a credible, for a honest peace efforts, one needs to talk to Kyiv and to go there, to see the aggression through their eyes and through the eyes of those who are being bombed.
The EU's top diplomat expressed confidence that the bloc would finalise a plan within days to buy ammunition for Ukraine after Kiev expressed frustration at wrangling among EU member states. Artillery rounds, particularly 155mm shells, have become critical to the conflict as Ukrainian and Russian forces wage an intense war of attrition. Officials in Kiev say they're burning through more rounds than its allies can currently produce.
Russia has been accused of cynicism at the first session of the United Nations Security Council since Moscow took over the presidency of the organisation. The meeting heard that the world is in a state of crisis, unprecedented since the foundation of the UN in 1945.
Tensions between major powers are at an historic high. So are the risks of conflict through misadventure or miscalculation. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, in violation of the United Nations Charter and international law, is causing massive suffering and devastation to the country and its people, and adding to the global economic dislocation triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic.
But Russia had a completely different take.
Мы вновь, как и в годы холодной войны, подошли к опасной, а может быть еще более опасной черте. Ситуация усугубляется утратой веры в многосторонность, когда финансово-экономическая агрессия Запада разрушает блага глобализации, когда Вашингтон и его союзники отказываются от дипломатии и требуют выяснения отношений на поле боя. Все это в стенах ООН, созданной для предотвращения ужасов войны.
Accusing Moscow of cynicism, the head of the EU delegation said that by calling the meeting, Russia was trying to portray itself as a defender of the UN Charter, but that nothing could be further from the truth. Oleg.